Although Parkinson's is a very complex disease and affects individuals in varying degrees and forms, there are three primary components in the physiology of Parkinson's disease: the basal ganglia, substantia nigra, and dopamine. The basal ganglia is comprised of four structures: the caudae, the putamen, which collectively together comprise the striatum, the thalamus, and the globus pallidus, which is not seen because it sits behind the putamen. There are three primary neurotransmitters involved in Parkinson's disease. These chemical messengers deliver excitatory and inhibitory information to the brain and nervous system. Both are necessary for smooth movement and function. Glutamate is an amino acid neurotransmitter synthesized in the brain. It is the most abundant neurotransmitter in the brain. It's involved in every excitatory brain function, and it's key in neural circuit communication. Glutamate facilitates cognition, emotion, sensory function, and movement. It also plays a role in immune system and gut health. Another important neurotransmitter in the basal ganglia is GABA, or gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA is a chemical messenger whose job it is to inhibit neurotransmissions in the brain and nervous system. It decreases neuronal excitability. Glutamate can convert to GABA. GABA has a naturally calming effect. It reduces stress, anxiety, fear, and supports lower blood pressure and improves sleep, among other things. When it comes to Parkinson's disease, dopamine is the most integral neurotransmitter in the basal ganglia. It can be excitatory or inhibitory. Its effects depend on which types of receptors are present on the membrane of the neurons. Dopamine is only found in specific and small areas of the brain with the highest concentration in the substantia nigra pars compacta. Dopamine is made by the amino acid tyrosine, which converts to L-DOPA and then to dopamine. Dopamine is integral to the smooth movement of the body and optimal function of the nervous system. It's known as the feel-good hormone, regulating reward-motivated behavior and motor control. It also influences attention, focus, learning, heart rate, and blood vessel function, sleep, and movement. If we look at the basal ganglia function in a normal brain, we see that the neurotransmitter glutamate is amply supplied from the cortex to the striatum, also from the cortex to the subthalamic nucleus. From the nucleus, it's rerouted to the substantia nigra pars compacta, the lateral globulus pallidus, and medial globulus pallidus. It also returns from the thalamus back to the cortex. If we look at GABA, we see that it comes from the cortex into the lateral globulus pallidus and reroutes to the nucleus and the substantia nigra pars reticulata. It also returns to the thalamus. The striatum also delivers GABA to the medial globulus pallidus. When we look at dopamine, we see that it comes from only one place, the substantia nigra pars compacta. From there, it's rerouted in two pathways, which are called nigrostriatal pathways, into the striatum. It also goes from the pars compacta into the subthalamic nucleus. This diagram represents normal neural transmission in a healthy brain. Unfortunately, basal ganglia function in a brain with Parkinson's is very different. Note the differences. We still see that the neurotransmitter glutamate is delivered from the cortex into the striatum and the subthalamic nucleus, but in smaller quantities. The nucleus still delivers glutamate to the substantia nigra pars compacta, the lateral globulus pallidus, and the medial globulus pallidus. But again, the return of the glutamate from the thalamus to the cortex is in smaller quantities. We also see that the GABA is in ample supply from the cortex to the LGP, but minimally delivered back to the nucleus and the medial globulus pallidus. We see no dopamine whatsoever. All quantities of neurotransmitters are irregular. Substantia nigra is Latin for black substance. The substantia nigra sits at the base of the basal ganglia, set deep in the midbrain. Although it is referred to as a single structure, it is actually comprised of two parts, the pars compacta and pars reticulata. The pars compacta holds the highest concentration of dopamine in the brain. The areas with blackish coloration come from densely populated neurons with high levels of neuromelanin. The pars reticulata is more heavily populated with GABA neurons and appears as long thread-like structures in the substantia nigra. The function of the substantia nigra is to make dopamine and send it to the striatum, the caudae and putamen, which is part of the basal ganglia. It distributes the dopamine vis-a-vis two nigrostriatal pathways. The synergy of the basal ganglia, substantia nigra, and dopamine, along with other neurotransmitters, is complex and must be precise to enable normal brain and motor function to occur. These intricate components act effortlessly and without our consciousness, left unnoticed until there is a problem like Parkinson's disease.